History, episode 102, Friday night, but we can't miss a week, Gary. We have got a special guest. Actually, Hot Water History's first two-time guest. It's Trevor Alcorn of Tridentine Brewing. Trevor, what's going on, man?
I'm doing fantastic. It's a great Friday evening, especially when I can be on Hot Water History for the second time. So thank you both for having me back.
Of course.
You, Trevor Alcorn.
Yeah, Gary, we had a fun day yesterday.
We sure did. Explain to the audience what we did, Charlie.
We had our Tridentine Brewing Brew Day, where we saw how everything was made right there. And like Trevor was saying before, brewing beer it's not as exciting as it sounds, but the attention to detail and the precision that goes into crafting all of these beers, I think we've all got one. It was pretty cool to see up close just how the bacon's made.
It's exacting, the process. And I suspect, well, maybe we could get into this, Trevor, the intentionality of brewing and how sensitive everything is and the care that has to be paid to the process, as your dad and you and your brother were showing us that. Um, is that reflected in your spirituality and prayer life? I suspect that there's a connection there. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Gary. Yeah, as you said, it's definitely very, very methodical and thought out. Certainly in a way that one might not think. Certainly, one thinks it's relatively, maybe in an abstract way, it's relatively straightforward and simple. You know, there's only a handful of ingredients that you can count on one hand that go into beer, and it should be straightforward. But especially when it gets into more of a commercial grade, or we'll just say like an award-winning category, it it definitely the level of precision and the steps that you need to take to kind of like up your game increases. So certainly, I think, as you mentioned, in comparison to the spiritual life, if you were to start out, you might be taking baby steps, but then things grow over time and you add more, and you might layer things, or have prayer at different times of the day, or meditation and things like that. So it gets more complex as you advance in the spiritual life. So there's definitely some commonalities there as well.
Yeah, yesterday I was thinking of us as monks, although we didn't live a vow of silence. We were pretty jovial and boisterous throughout the whole process. There was a lot of good ribbing going on and storytelling, and a lot of jokes and laughter. Cigars were involved, and also imbibing some of the amazing product. So it was, I pictured us, if we weren't in that mode, we'd be as monks, and how if we just were to go back, and if we were not to be in Herscher, Illinois, but instead in Liège, Belgium, or something like that, in the Trappist monastery, how that type of work would be so conducive to a monastic life and in community, because there's so much care taken to it, and so and yet the product is what you want to see come to fruition, and you don't want to skimp on any of it.
Absolutely. And the fact is too, as you saw, there's a lot of time for conversation, but if there wasn't a conversation, there'd be a lot of time for prayer, meditation along the way, just because there's a lot of gaps where you're doing manual cleaning, or you're waiting for certain steps to finish up. So there's that time where you can really have some silence along the way, if it's not a situation like we had yesterday. So you can absolutely see how it could be very conducive to the monastic life, and how it was, and how there was several hundred breweries in the heyday. I think, in fact, over 1,500 breweries, it was estimated, prior to prior to Napoleon and the French Revolution, actually, in Europe. So they were monastic. So it's absolutely conducive.
Right. And the Napoleon film doesn't show how that little Corsican bastard ruined a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he's glorified in a lot of ways, but he's kind of the worst
Well, he's
in
the
a lot of
maestro of
ways.
statism, isn't he? He's really the maestro of statism. Um, what Beethoven was to a symphony, he was to totalitarianism in many ways.
Yeah,
But
he's genius in many ways for sure, but certainly, and I'm glad that he, at least allegedly converted on his deathbed, or at least came back to the church and made a confession, because he definitely needed it. He was a bad dude.
he was a bad hombre.
Yeah.
Un homme malheureux, yeah, a malheureuse, yeah. Uh, I felt like we were the Charlie didn't. I think I said this during yesterday's brew day. We were the envy of the Catholic podcasting world.
The holy
Not just the
envy.
not just the ANCAP libertarian Catholic podcasting world, which is huge, by the way. Okay, it's just us, but I mean, but other, but but the Catholic podcasting world, we were the envy. We were with Trevor Alcorn for Tridentine Brew, and we were in the belly of the beautiful beast, getting things done.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I love the brew room too. Everything from the logos on the wall to you've got the pre-brewing prayer that I got to do with your dad and brothers. That's special as well. And then, I'm not gonna mess this quote up this time, but making the profane sacred. It's you do a great job with that in the room. So I thought the whole day was beautiful. And Gary, what was your takeaway from, I mean, you didn't do much, but the actual process of
Wait
making
a
the beer?
second. I was there for moral
You
support.
were there for moral support, but what about the actual beer making? What did you think about that?
I was just so impressed by how skilled and knowledgeable your dad is, and how he has a real understanding not just of the process of brewing, but he sees it as a sacred act. It's an act of service. It's an act of it's certainly it's a passion of his, and it's a passion of yours, and it's something that you beautifully share as father and son. But you're also, it actually made me think of, there's a great line or segment in Deus Caritas Est, Pope Benedict's great encyclical, his first, when he was pontiff, and he said that, and this is a very libertarian, excuse me, not libertine, but libertarian point that Benedict made. He said, uh, too often we reflect upon the what we might say as the negative externalities of exchange and commerce. But in reality, God has made it so that we might engage in economic exchange. And when that exchange is voluntary, when it's not coerced, but when it's full of the act of love, he said an exchange between someone like a brewer and a drinker is an act of love. And it just seems like, for someone who's really doing all this work for this process, it's not just and eventually you and your dad are not going to meet all the people who drink your beer,
Right.
but the meticulous nature, the work and the passion that you put into the product is still a reflection of wanting the best for the person who's drinking it. And I that's a beautiful, I guess, encapsulation of God's love reflected through cooperation and exchange. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's very beautifully put, Gary. And you have quite a way with words, and how you're able to describe things. I always love hearing your explanations for things, because I think I put it so very, very simply, and listening to you say it is, I always enjoy it on all the podcasts, how you explain it. So yeah, I think that really I think the love and the work behind it all is really a great reflection of our just motto, which is brewing beer for the greater glory of God. And
Mhm.
that doing that, we want to actually put forward something that, would give God greater glory,
Right.
in that it's not a garbage product or halfway thought through, that we really want to put our best foot forward. And it's always a learning process, and sometimes it doesn't go quite according to plan. But at the same time, always want to do our best. And certainly in that, my father, who in a past life, in his past career, was really involved in quality. That really shines through as well, in what he's doing and how meticulous he is in putting together the process and seeing that everything is, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted along the way. So I think that's a great reflection of him as well.
For sure.
Yesterday, it reminded me of the verse from Colossians where Paul writes about work at everything that you do as though you're working for the Lord rather than for people. I felt that a lot yesterday. We're not just saying all these nice things because Tridentine Brewing is a sponsor and the only sponsor of Hot Water History. This is all real. This is all real.
It all happens to be true, though.
It was a spiritual experience yesterday being there, but definitely not just saying this because Trevor's the only sponsor we have right now, but we're super excited for the commercial success that is to be eventually one day. So I'm excited for that. Gary, do you want to play this little game we've got for Trevor?
Well, yes, we have a little game for Trevor. It's specifically for you.
All
Our
right.
guy, Trevor Alcorn, lone sponsor of the Hot Water History podcast. May we flourish for 1,000 years together. Okay.
Absolutely.
But all that being said, I just want to ask you one more question, and that is if you could share with people both your level of excitement about going commercial and when they might be able to expect, fingers crossed, and with a lot of Ave Marias, when they can easily get their hands and their tongues on this amazing work you're doing and all the different varieties. I mean, it's just I've never had a red IPA, and I'm drinking this Sacred Flame red IPA that you collaborated with Chainsaw Brewing. It's just delicious. My mouth's watering. I haven't had a sip in a while, but my mouth's watering. So anyway, you start talking, I'll start drinking.
All right, Gary. Yeah, so we're pretty far along with the process to get to the commercial stage. So we've actually got our federal license. I know how much we love to talk about the government and how many hoops are involved in this. Anything related to alcohol seems like it, I might as well just be dealing in, I don't know, like, uranium or, just something like getting an oil permit to drill in Alaska or something. You'd think it'd be that crazy, but it's just, to be able to brew beer and to sell it. So, so there's multiple layers you have to go through for permits, different hoops you have to jump through. So we've been in a little bit of, licensing and lawyer hell. But I think we're emerging. We're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So we've got our federal license. We got that about a month ago. So we were thrilled at that. That's the first step. And then you can go through with all of your state licenses that you need to get. So we're in that process right now, state licenses. Once we're done with that, then we're going to be good to go actually to really begin brewing. So a few of the other details that we're working on right now is finalizing our commercial recipes. So we had all of our homebrew recipes, but we're also brewing all of our, or tweaking and working with the brewery that we're going to be working with to brew our commercially available products, because we can't brew it all in our basement right now. And we want to just test the waters, and at the very least test the waters and see, is this a commercially viable product? Will people buy it without investing, let's just say, millions of dollars into building a facility? So we're working with another brewery. They're phenomenal. They're even run by faithful Catholics. So we're really excited to work with them. And we've been working with them on fine-tuning the commercial recipe. So we've had our hands involved in that. And actually, we've been in the process of brewing it at home and tweaking it and making sure it's up to what we would expect. And that was one of the recipes actually we brewed yesterday, was a commercial variant for impressive Imperial Red Ale. So we did that with you guys yesterday. So we'll see how that turns out. I'm really excited for that. But we've done that so far for our 3 brews. So I might as well say that we've selected 3 brews in conjunction with our distributor, which is to the south and the west of the city. So we're talking about the suburbs of Chicago here. 3 brews, which is going to be our Quartermaster Jerry Blonde Ale, our Diaz Area Imperial Stout, and our Cristeros Mexican Lager. So those are the 3 that we're going to start out with. We also did the impressive, because that was the 4th one that we're considering, just have it on the docket. So those are the 3 that we're going to start with, but we want to incorporate others in, and certainly maybe pull 1 or 2 of those that I mentioned out during the course of the year and put others in that are more, seasonal. So we still want to do that. So those aren't like the 3 that are going to be like, that's it forever. Amen. So we've been doing that. We've also been working with with the artist. So we've been working with Beartooth Catholic, who you all are probably very familiar with. Chris Lewis of Beartooth does a phenomenal job with all of his artwork. We love working with Chris. We have some of his beautiful illustrations on some of our existing homebrew labels. And so we're really happy to work with Chris right now in the creative design process currently for our 3 commercial beers. And so I know that you guys got a chance to see maybe some of the designs that we had in the works. I know they're not finalized. I'm really excited where things are at right now with those designs. I think other people will be as well. So right now, I think as long as when we can get the licenses squared away, that's really when things are going to be all set, and we'll be ready to brew. So I'm thinking at this point, it's going to be early 2024. So probably, let's just say February, maybe, when we can actually brew the beer. And then I'd probably say, maybe like in April, May, when we could maybe see the beer on store shelves and available for people to buy. And that would be around Chicagoland. So again, to the south and the west of the city. We've already been in contact with other distributors nearby. They want to see what the sales are like. So as long as we can prove that, it sells, it does well, then we'll be able to then take it and move into other markets. So surprisingly, as I get into, as I've learned more about distributors, I thought a distributor was like, oh, for the entire state or, for the entire area. And it's like, it's not. Like there's distributors for just Cook County. Now Cook County's enormous, not granted, like for people, but still like just Cook County or just a few counties.
Almost like a gang. They're like gangs.
Yeah. I mean, there's
territories.
overlapping territories and whatnot. I mean, we really like the distributor that we partnered with. They're great. But
the other distributor, his first name is Alphonse. I don't know if that's a problem or the other guy's O'Hara gang.
But I mean, there is competition among distributors because they have overlapping territories and whatnot. So, we've also looked into, and I know that this comes up as a question all the time for us, which is, can I order the beer online? I live in Florida. I live in Washington State. Whatever. Can I just order it online? And the answer is, not right now. And unfortunately, because of the laws and the government, really. So it's really a state issue, not a federal issue. So each of the states control whether or not breweries can ship direct to consumers. So only 12 states allow for it right now. Unlike wineries, which can 49 of the 50 states, I think, you can ship wine direct to consumers.
Really?
Wine lobby, yeah, the wine lobby was on it about 20 years ago, and they lobbied all the state legislatures for wine. But wine is treated different from beer, is treated different from spirits. So they're all three separate categories, and the beer lobby was way behind it. And so it's still in most states, it's not allowed. So there is active lobbying going on to try and change the laws. Uh, Even in Illinois, there's been bills in successive years to try and ship direct to consumers, but they haven't made great headway. So in any
Grease
case,
a lot more palms. We got to grease more palms in Springfield.
that's right. The old 3-tier system, which is breweries, distributors, and stores, that has a lot of sway. And so I think that there's a lot of resistance to breaking the system. So we'd love to ship direct to consumers. We'll see with the states that it makes sense. Unsurprisingly, New Hampshire, for example, allows it. So New Hampshire would be a great state to ship to. Ohio allows it. There's a few others, but we're going the more traditional route because that's kind of how we're forced to go in a certain sense. And any support that people can give, if not, when it comes out eventually here, hopefully again in the spring of 2024, even if you couldn't buy anything or you're just not in the area, any prayers, as Gary was saying, storm heaven with some aves, because I think that's what we need most of all is some prayers from our supporters to make it happen. And then of course, if you want to get out there, you're in the area, buy a pack, that'd be much appreciated.
Well, it's going to be a lot of Aves and Charlie Westman buying about $1,000 worth of beer at a time.
I'm thinking of the different giveaways I could do. Like I think I might cover like up to a certain dollar amount in beers. I'll just say send me the receipt and I'll Venmo you if you buy this stuff.
He's gonna be the beer Santa Claus for Tridentine.
I'm gonna be like the Paul Revere when this stuff's out. We're gonna turn to Paul Revere.
That's great. Here's a 6-pack of you for you. Here's Julius Here for you.
Yeah, you're gonna be our Oprah.
Yeah, just drive by there's a bunch of migrants in Pilsen. I might just get all these guys hammered.
Oh, Dios mío, es bueno cerveza.
Viva Cristo Rey.
Sí, viva Cristo Rey. All right, are we ready for our game, Charlie, you think?
I'm ready.
All right, Trevor. So
I don't even know what this is, by the way, Trevor. So if this is embarrassing, it's all good.
I created this just for you. Okay.
All right.
And I'm not even going to promise that the future, whoever it might be, second 2-time guest, whoever that would be, that lucky devil, or that lucky bastard, whoever he is, they're not going to get a game. It's just for you, Trevor. Are you ready? This is the Get Trevor Alcorn Annoyed game. Are you ready?
Okay.
The reason I did this is because if you look at our first episode with you, and since we've known you, those who don't know you as well as we do, you are a very happy, holy person, and you're smiling constantly. So I always think about what are the things that I could say, and they're going to be just things, phrases, one thing entities. And I want you to rate them on a scale of Trevor Alcorn annoyance. Now, of course, for the rest of us, this would be like a 30 on a 10-point scale. But for you, you're so calm, cool, and collected, it could be a 5. You just handle things better than most of us. Certainly better than me and Charlie. I mean, you should have seen the conversations we had when we were fighting it out on issues regarding the book, from design to material. I even sent him a baby crying meme one time because he was such a baby about something. So anyway, I'm going to state the thing. You tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being irksome. It's just a little bit annoying,
Okay.
all the way through 10. It's so infuriating that you want to vomit. Okay.
Okay.
All right. The first one. And then you could just riff on it as long as you want, but I will cut you off at a little bit around a minute because we have 10 of these, okay?
Do you want me to riff on it and then right after I give a rating?
Give me a rating and then riff on it to whatever extent you want, but I'm going to cut you off at around a minute to keep things concise.
Hey, that works for me.
All right, Trevor Alcorn, your first offering in Get Trevor Alcorn Annoyed game is vegans. 1 to 10.
7.
Oh, okay. Rip on vegans for me a little bit.
Yeah, I would say for the vegans, it's you know what? I would say if it's just you and you want to do it, hey, that's fine. You go ahead and do it. That's your life. But at the same time, I think it's when it's imposed on everyone else. Now you come over. Now I have to change the whole meal. Now you go over to someone else's house. Now everyone has to adapt to you because you can't have anything else. And not even vegetarian is one thing, but then it's like vegans the next. And I have some relatives that are vegans. And so I've experienced this personally where it's like a whole meal, the whole week has to change because of it. So that's what annoys me. If, you're doing it yourself, that's fine. But yeah, as soon as it's like, well, now every single meal that I'm involved with has to change, and now I can't even eat cheese and like fake meat substitutes and all this other stuff. Yeah, I'm not about that. That's a little bit that's a little bit annoying to me.
All right. Excellent. That's a good start. I got him a 7 already. I was starting easy. Charlie, do you have any thoughts about vegans?
I was on a plant-based diet when I was a
Oh, now it's an
fraud.
8.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago when COVID first came out, when I was like actually concerned for a week, and then I grew up and became an adult. I kept on this plant-based diet, but I had cheat days on the weekend. But yeah, I think it's a psyop. I think veganism's a psyop. I think it made
Absolutely.
me weaker when I
Yeah.
was on it. So I actually tried it out but I was psyoped, and
Yeah.
that's a
Definitely.
rare they got me, and I'm not easy to get, but they got me.
They got
So
you. They got you.
yeah,
All right. We're ready for number.
I like the 7 score.
Okay, 7 score. All right. Here we're gonna get a little bit dicier. Okay. And this is Pope splainers.
Oh,
If vegans now, mind you, you already set the bar
Yeah,
at 7 for vegan.
the market's already.
Yeah.
man. Oh my gosh. Probably an 8 because this is one of those topics that really makes me like my fingers twitch on Twitter. And I'm like, oh, I want to respond to this. I want to respond to this. It's sort of crazy that said. But I think what helps me with the Pope splainers is actually it's just helped me see as well kind of the that like Pope splainers who are big huge Pope Francis fans, and then those who will set up a contest view are actually like two sides of the same coin. It's like some people who are just trying really hard to reconcile everything, and other people who are like have, I think, a really wrong reading of like Vatican I and the powers of the papacy. And so they're like, well, we have to reject the Pope because no true Pope would do these things. And so they're really like the same thing.
Yes.
And so that's helped me a lot because I'm like, okay, I understand where they're coming from. So at least I can and then I just like have to walk away. Like I see crazy stuff. I'm like, this is driving me insane. Like looking at this and like, can't they see what they're seeing? But then I think about it and like, okay, they're trying to like rationalize this and justify it because otherwise they might lose their faith because they have a wrong conception of the papacy. But still, so when I think of it like that, it helps me like calm down a bit. And I'm like, okay, they're well meaning and everything, but still I just have to walk away. I'm like, I can't deal with this. So anyway.
Yeah, it made me that point about the two sides of the same coin is well taken. When I had Anthony Abate on from Avoiding Babylon, he hit me with a question. He's like, Gary, do you think the next pope or maybe the pope after that, whoever he might be, Pius the 13th, Benedict the 17th, whoever it is, do you think they're just gonna declare Francis an anti-pope? And I said, I don't think so. I think that a lot of as it happened before with Honorius and others, that actions might be declared anathema. And so that allows for a precision where
Yes.
the office of the papacy isn't totally delegitimized, and yet the things that were openly heretical and more on the side of apostatism are eradicated or denounced. So I think that I suspect, I pray that that's the way it goes. Charlie, thoughts on Pope splainers?
Nah, just no comment. Just keep going ahead.
That's exactly what a former vegan would say.
Yeah.
All right. Here, Trevor. Now there's some This one's gonna make you laugh.
Okay.
Okay. Any liturgical song written by St. Louis Jesuits.
Oh.
You can pick which one. I have Sing to the Mountains. I have Sing a New Song, and I have Like a Shepherd.
I have to pick one.
No, you don't have to pick one. I just gave you some examples just to
Oh,
really
wow.
inflame the passions if you're going toward front. I mean, is it above an 8?
You know what? I actually, it's probably less annoying
Ooh, oh,
than
interesting.
the V. Yeah, not that I love it or anything. Um, but I would probably say it's like maybe like a 5
Okay.
because it's one of those maybe really annoyances
Hmm.
when I go to a Novus Ordo mass, and I hear some of these, you know, saccharine tunes and whatnot, and it's like, okay, this is like from a bygone era, and I'm sure all the blue-haired individuals in the pews that they might like this, but so it's like, you know what, it's pretty annoying, but it's not as annoying as vegans or Pope splainers. I will say that.
Sure. Yeah, and when you walk into a Novus Ordo mass and there's a bunch of blue hairs wearing "I Love Marty Haugen" t-shirts, you got a problem.
Yeah.
Charlie, Novus Ordo St. Louis Jesuit
Yeah,
songs.
this one's a little higher for me than a 5. This one's 7 or 8 for me.
Oh
I
yeah.
think bad music just ruins the mass, and I think that
What's your
it.
favorite Novus Ordo slash? It doesn't have to be St. Louis Jesuit. Just
Ooh.
favorite Novus
Yeah,
Ordo
I don't
song
know
to
if
hate.
it's
To hate,
to
not favorite.
hate.
Yeah,
I
like the one
mean,
that just I'm gonna walk out of this church.
anything, the guitar, it's really the
Yeah.
guitar.
Yeah.
The guitar, it's not really the lyrics, it's more so the instruments.
Mm.
But
And I'm the opposite. They could play a freaking harmonica and a ukulele. If the lyrics are just that bad, I will
yeah,
walk
I'm
out.
I'm the other way. If I get
Yeah.
so, or if the people start clapping,
Oh, the clapping.
Have you ever
Yeah.
went to a children's mass where they sing it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you
And
want to
then
talk about the lyrics? All right, I'll.
it's funny you mentioned that. I read a book when I was in formation called Why Men Don't Go to Church. It was written by a Protestant, but it was pretty solid. And he said one of the things that drive men away are children's masses. And at first you're like, oh, okay, well, that's why. Why would, and it's because men want perfection, they want beauty, they want precision, like in, the process of brewing, the process of building a house. They want those projects to be done and done well. And they don't like this idea of, well, anybody could do this. And we can sit and say, we can clap and say, oh, the kids are really trying, even though Jimmy's up there prepubescent cracking on every, C note or whatever.
Right.
So that's one of the bad reasons. Okay.
There's some truth to that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
well, some of those cringiest masses I've been to are children's masses. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, and I didn't have this on the list, but it just popped in my mind. How much do you hate in the process of the Novus Ordo when they pull the kids out for the children's liturgy of the word and they separate the kids from the family and then they go do catechesis on the readings away from the family? That, for me, that's an 11 out of 10. I just cannot take that. Thoughts there?
It's pretty high. It,
Okay.
it has to be. Yeah, I would say it's pretty high.
I mean, I assume that the Alcorns and the Richides and the future Westermans would never, the kids don't go. They just sit. They look up at me and I'm like, not a chance. Not a chance.
Yeah, that's right up there. I don't know that it's worse than
Sing a new song.
ex- I would say the extraordinary EMHCs, the extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion. I'd say that's much
Oh.
higher. That's like in a 10 for me.
Hmm.
And then I think pretty high. The side of peace is pretty high for me.
Who was I
So
reading that someone said that they were absolutely insistent? Was it someone who was interpreting Akita or something like that? I can't remember exactly what it was, but
mm,
communion in the hand was the work of the demons. I just read something about that one interpreter of Akita or one of the other Marian apparitions or another kind of Catherine Emmerich type, but more recent to our own lives, even within our own lives. In the case, well, mine lifespan is longer than both of yours, but it was some relatively in the last few decades had said that they received some sort of insight or revelation that it was the demons that started the push toward communion in the hand.
I wouldn't be surprised, because at the end of the day, that is just one of those, probably the biggest contributor to the loss of the belief in the real presence. I mean, there's other contributors, but still,
Yeah.
I mean, that has to be like one of the biggest. I could sit there all day and listen to the worst hymns in the mass all day, but I
Mhm.
think that like that's a big thing for me, is just the reverence towards the Eucharist. Out of everything, like if that
Yes.
was fixed, things would be, you know, 1,000 times better in the Novus Ordo. I'm not saying it's perfect, or, you know, but it's still like, if that was fixed, just general reverence towards the Eucharist, eliminating extraordinary Eucharistic ministers,
Yes.
kneeling for communion, for example,
Mhm.
communion on the tongue, that would go a long way. And believe me, I could endure that. The horrible hymns, 70s hymns, and the sign of peace all day long, if that was the case.
All right, we're moving on to the next one. It's another Novus Ordo oriented one.
All right, bring it
Worst
on.
part, worst part of the Novus Ordo. This one you get to pick any
Okay.
segment of the Novus Ordo that just for you the hardest to bear, the most difficult to get through, either from a theological point of view, liturgical, contemplative, whatever it might be. I'll give you an example. For me, it's the kiss of peace in the Novus Ordo.
Okay.
Especially when it goes overboard. People are crossing aisles, and then you have the Lamb of God the Agnus Dei is going on, and people are still shaking hands. I just think well, even Benedict said it was the most ill-timed and inappropriate inclusion into the Novus Ordo. What are your thoughts there? And you gotta give me a rating once you declare your part that you hate the most.
Oh, the kiss of peace.
Yeah, I
That
mean, no,
one.
you don't have to pick the kiss of peace. I was just giving an example of what mine is.
Oh man, yeah. Like I think, like I was mentioning just previously, I would say just and I know that maybe it's not in the rubrics, because people are gonna say, oh, this is just, it was an addition, but
The
yeah, like
spirit. It was the spirit
it
that
was
took
it was
them.
the spirit. Oh, Trevor, that's not what the rubrics say. If people execute according to the rubrics, it wouldn't be like that. You know, just yeah, just like, you know, the way that our Lord's handled with Holy Communion, like all of that, everything surrounding that, from the extraordinary ministers to receiving on the hand to not kneeling. I think that constellation of things right
Yeah.
there, that's what that's a 10 for me.
Okay. Oh,
Whenever
10.
I'm there, yeah, that's a 10, because at the end of the day, it's our Lord. You know,
Yeah.
all these other things can
Mhm.
do drive me nuts. And I think, like you said, the kiss of peace totally takes away from the mass. Like if I want to
Yes.
say hi to Bob afterwards for coffee or whatever, I'll say hi to Bob afterwards for coffee. Like, why do I have
I
to
know.
go wave at him, give him the peace sign from across the church, and then
Yes.
shake hands with someone else? It just,
Exactly.
yeah. And then you're right, like people are crossing aisles and everything else. And so that does drive me nuts. Like that's probably like, you know, a 7 or an 8, the kiss of
Yeah.
peace. But
And the worst
yeah,
part, we're drawn to contemplation of Christ's sacrifice on the cross. We're supposed to look through the eyes of John and Mary and look at the sacrifice that is our redemption. And then it's like, oh, hey, good to see you. I'm so happy that you're here. Can you
yeah.
imagine Our Lady saying that to John, or John saying that to Lady, or Mary Cleopas? I mean, or Joseph of Arimathea, like high fiving as the crucifixions. It's just so odd and
Well,
out of place.
and I think, Gary, what you just said speaks to the fact that the sacrificial nature of the Mass has been so de-emphasized, and all the emphasis on the communal meal aspect
Yes.
of the Mass has been like the preeminent thing. So, oh, if it's just a meal, we're all getting together, we're all buddy buddy, and like
Right.
the whole sacrificial nature is completely de-emphasized to a point where people just don't even know that that's really what's happening anymore. Yeah, I think that explains a lot.
Yeah. Anything that demystifies the mass, I think, is just throw it away.
Right.
Get rid of it. Okay. This is a good one. People who like I can't even get it out. People who like Roger Chillingworth from the Scarlet Letter complain about hot conservative women putting out a calendar.
Oh man.
Charlie, you remember your Scarlet Letter?
I do.
Okay, good. All right. So I think these are all Roger Chillingworth Puritans that drive me crazy. So what's your rating there, Trevor?
Yeah, so okay. So this one is going to be a little bit lower actually because so I'll say this. I wasn't a huge fan of the calendar for a few reasons, but I'm not going to say it's the worst thing in the world. I think a lot of people went off the deep end with it. You know, I think
Jenna
there was people.
Ellis. Sorry, I just
Yeah.
coughed.
I didn't, you know what? I didn't even read some of her. She had some horrible takes earlier on other things.
Oh, she's
But I didn't
terrible. She's
see.
just talk about turning terrible really
Yeah,
quickly.
yes, she not the best. But like people saying like demonic.
Ah,
I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I do think like okay, like would I be happy if my daughter posed in it? I know some of the pictures were like, especially like Josie the Redheaded Libertarian, like I didn't think that was a big deal, but like some of the other ones were like, okay, like would I be happy if like my wife or my daughter was doing it, or would I get the calendar? No, I probably wouldn't. But at the same time, so I would probably say like probably like a maybe like a two because
okay.
I get where some of the people are coming from with some of the criticisms, and I think that the beer company that was doing it that's positioning itself as a conservative beer company,
Mhm.
um, I think it falls right back into conservative ink, which is
Ah, yeah.
preserving what was popular 10 years ago. So I could easily see
Mhm.
2010 Budweiser putting out a calendar. I mean, way more over the top than that
Yeah, for
one, by the
sure.
way.
Yeah.
But but celebrating is like, oh, we're owning the libs because at least the women don't have penises. I think that that and how that's not really a win to me. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, so yeah, I'm not as annoyed. Some of the takes are just like they're cringe. Like I'll give you another take that I thought was kind of cringe that was coming out of this, which was someone was like, well, if this is conservative and we're in favor of families, then why don't they have pregnant women and families on the calendar? It's like
Oh God.
like okay, like it's just like
Great
really
recipe to make
cringe
sure your
stuff.
calendar never sells anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it's just really dumb. Some of the takes out there. So yeah, I'm not really a fan of it. I'll be honest with the calendar. But I do think that some of the takes were really over the top against it. So I'd say I'm like at a two
Okay,
with
great.
some of the
Charlie,
bad
you want to
takes.
give a ranking on that? That one didn't make Trevor mad at all,
It did
except
make
the
me.
reactions.
I'm at about a 4. It seems like it made you the most mad
Oh,
out of
I'm
us
at
three.
like a 10. I hate
Wow.
the infusion and really contamination of Catholicism by Calvinism drives me crazy. If we're gonna be, as much as I respect the Amish for their way of life, but I just cannot take it strikes me more of Albigensianism than and puritanical stuff than and the judgmental crap is just over the top. And I mean, okay, Ashley St. Clair is beautiful. She's in a hot tub with bubbles. So what? If you don't want the calendar, don't buy it. And a lot, and let's just be frank. If I know we're going to alienate the 4 women that actually listen to this podcast, and that is a lot of the angst is just that the women who are, I'm not going to say like Jenna Ellis, but I'll go ahead and say like Jenna Ellis, that they're just not as attractive as these women. There's a lot of jealousy. It's pretty clear. I mean, that's where I think that's where the genesis comes from. Oh, how indecent of you. Meanwhile, Jenna Ellis is, in skimpy dresses defending Trump. I mean, well, what is that? So don't give me that. I really detest any type of infusion of Calvinism into Catholicism.
Yeah. I mean, I knew it was gonna make you the most mad, but I just thought the calendar was a little cringy, so it
Huh.
didn't make me too mad.
Right. Okay. We'll move on from the calendar.
And you also set us up
Mine's
with
on the
you also
mine's on the way, by the way.
you also set us up with two pretty big ones right before that. So
Okay. So
you're
relative.
talking Novus Ordo and stuff versus
Yeah.
some calendar. You know, we gotta get picky at the top.
All right. Here's one for Trevor, and this is one that really Charlie and I can't relate to, but you can. When a batch of beer turns out to be bad / not up to Tridentine brewing standards.
Oh wow. Um, I would say probably a 6.
Okay.
And that is mainly because there is when a batch of beer goes bad or there's something that's off, you've invested already so much time, money, even though it's not crazy amount of money, but it could be hundreds of dollars still. But really time and effort. And you guys were there for brew day. But even there was prep before, Charlie, you got there. You know, my dad went out, bought the ingredients. He went up north to the suburbs, got the ingredients, did all the research, cleaned everything, had it milled, had it ready to go before you got there. So there was several hours invested before that. He cleaned up afterwards. So it's like a full-blown day. And then there's monitoring it for several weeks, bottling it. That's like a whole half-day thing. And then you have to wait a few more weeks, or sometimes a few more weeks. Now what we're doing with bottling, we can almost get instantaneously, open it once it's bottled and see how it tastes. But when it goes bad, you're like, well, A, what do we do wrong? But B, it's like, man, that really sucks. That was just all that time and money just kind of wasted. I mean, it's a learning opportunity for sure, but then sometimes you don't know what's the problem here.
Right.
Because we've run into problems in the past where it's like we did everything right. We think we crossed every T, dotted every I. And so then you have to like break down each individual step and be like, what do we do here? Do we clean this wrong? Did we do this? What was the temperature at this step? What was going on? So it just becomes this like insane puzzle to try and figure out sometimes. And for me, I'm not always involved in every single batch day to day. So that's why I put it at 6, because for me, it's more frustrating because, I don't get now the beer is not so great for me to try. And I feel really bad for my father who went through all that. But I wasn't, expending all the time necessarily, but it would probably be closer to a 10 if I was
For
my
Jeff,
dad.
it's probably an 11.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty high up there just because of all the things that I mentioned before. So it's a frustrating experience when it doesn't go right.
All right, you had to know this one was coming. Fiducia supplicans.
For me, I'd say I'd say a 7, really, because I think this ties in a lot with Pope's planers. I think, well, for me personally, I don't have to worry about it from a day-to-day perspective, of course. I feel bad for all of especially the priests, the faithful priests who, especially if they're under a bad bishop, that now they have to deal with it because their bishop's going to put pressure on them. And that there are going to be these couples in irregular situations who also intentionally, like we see with like the cake baking things and other things, like intentionally go to priests to get them in trouble. Now I guarantee you that's going to happen. So I feel really bad for those priests in that situation. I guess I wasn't as surprised that it happened because it's the way really Pope Francis operates, and that there was all this talk before the synod and synodality, the meeting on meetings about how all these things were going to change, and then nothing changed. But then people were still saying like he's going to say no to the Germans, but then still issue something way further to the left and say, well, we gave some concession, but it's really not the same thing the Germans are doing. We told them no. And so I wasn't shocked that it happened. I feel bad for the church, of course, and what other people think from the outside, because now there's an impression that the church is changing its teachings. And so from the standpoint of souls, I think it's going to be a disaster, because people now, and you saw, I don't know if you saw an article, that anyone necessarily thinks that Chris Christie had
I was just
great
going to talk about that.
okay, that Chris Christie has like these great principles that he stands by or anything, but now even Chris Christie is standing behind the document and saying,
Correct.
well, now I'm changing my political stance on same-sex marriage.
And he even said, because the church is evolving.
Because the church is evolving, because look at this document and they're changing, I'm changing now.
Correct.
So let's be honest, Chris Christie was just looking for something to stand behind so he could just give a justification. But there are just going to be normal people who see not just what Chris Christie did, but just think the same way and say, well, look, things are changing, the church is evolving, they're getting with the times, they're okay with it. It's just a formality. There's old teaching and stuff.
Right.
So I think that it's just going to be damage to souls and damage to converts, potential converts.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to see it, especially like really good, faithful Protestants who are like sitting on the ledge, like maybe I'll jump the Tiber. And now they're going to see this and they're like going to have second thoughts, or they're going to go to Orthodoxy now.
Mhm.
So I think that, or other Catholics who are on the edge already, who are going to jump to Orthodoxy because
Right.
of it. So that's the unfortunate part. So I'd say I'm at a 7 with it.
Yeah. We know Christie's just crossing his hooves for when gluttony is going to be blessed.
I saw that tweet.
What? Yeah. So
That's good.
Charlie, FS, what are your thoughts?
8 or 9 for those same
Yeah.
reasons, just the confusion it's going to cause with so many potential Catholics, I think is what makes it the most dangerous.
Yeah, it's a 10, but you already knew that for me. Here we got 3 more. Is this good so far? I think this is great.
This
so
is
far.
good. You
This
should do
is-
this with more. You should do this with all your guests. that you
This
have, by the
reminds
way.
me of, am I a libertarian?
Yeah,
Uh,
the litmus test.
Litmus test here.
Yeah, which is golden, I have to say. That's one of the best things we've done. All right, here we go, Trevor. Libertines who think they are libertarians because they think libertarians are libertines.
Ooh. Yeah. I would say, man, I would say it's a 6 for me. I would actually say, though, what's more maddening for me would be people who say that, this comes from more conservative types, who do the same confusion, though, and they will equate libertarianism with libertines.
Right.
And they'll say any example of someone who says that they're a libertarian justifying
They're conservatives who want to smoke pot,
and they're like, oh, look, this is all the horrible things that this is what libertarians support. It's like, well, that person's a libertine. So, and even then, I've told you guys this before, like, I don't even know necessarily that I would be considered a libertarian, but I can at least make the distinction that for libertarianism, it's about, getting the government out of a lot of these areas so that people can make free choices, which is not the same thing as justifying the choices or supporting the choices, which I think is what people get confused in their mind, is they think that those two things are kind of the same, and they're not. So I'd
that's
say
the fundamental distinction. That's the fundamental distinction.
And most people don't make the distinction. And I think that, so yeah, I think that is pretty infuriating for me when I hear it, just because I think people, it's like, okay, come on, just think through it. Even if you don't consider yourself a libertarian, like, there's a distinction and you're just not making it.
Yeah. We don't have to, every time I get into a debate about roads or age of consent laws, I'm like, is this really what you think we're about? All right. So, Charlie, let me hear your opinion on libertines who think they're libertarians because they think libertarianism is all about libertinism.
Yeah, it's an 8, but now that this is an 8, I wish that FS was higher.
Okay.
I think it's just like right below FS for me.
Okay. How about this one? Ooh, we're gonna get in some deep water, hot water here. Christian Zionists.
10.
All right. Christian Zionist, Trevor.
Ooh, Yeah, I'd say probably an 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like just the whole concept, and certainly within evangelical Christianity, I think that that's obviously where it seems to have taken most hold. But I mean, you see Catholics that'll kind of do the same thing. And listen, I'm all for like certainly, you know, Israel can have its own state, that's fine. But this whole idea of, you know, that they have to be number one on America's list of, you know, that they're the 51st state, or, you know, whatever. And I'm fine if we have an alliance
We
with
don't
them.
even have a
Alliance.
competition. It's not even America's next. It's a top model. It's just America's top model. It's always
No.
Israel. It's like we just feign the competition. Oh,
Get out,
sorry, you lost again. Israel wins. Miss Israel.
get out of the way, Ukraine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm sorry, Ukraine. You were yesterday's news. You are old and saggy now, and
Yeah.
Israel's
So
perpetually hot.
yeah.
It's like Gal Gadot at 30, and she never ages. It's just insane. Yeah,
It's pretty crazy. I'm not a fan of it. And again, I'm not. And I think that unfortunately, well, it's whatever. It's like the new screaming racist about everything, right? Which is,
yeah.
oh, you're anti-Semitic because you don't support X, Y, Z. Look, again, like they can defend themselves. They have the right to have their own state. I mean, they have their own state. That's fine. But yeah, like the fact America, I mean, they're not our 51st state. So the fact that we treat them like that, I'm not a fan of that. And the fact that there's all these, you know, from like Ted Cruz to every single, you know, it seems like House
Tom
and Senate
Cotton.
member,
Yeah,
yeah, that
all of them.
they treat it like, honestly, it's probably higher than any of our states, because they could care less about any of our states. To be
That's right.
honest, you know, we could have a state literally invaded. Well, it is right now. You know,
Yeah.
Texas could be invaded. They could care less about our own sovereignty or state sovereignty. But as soon as it comes to another nation, you know, we need to drop everything and, you know, focus 100% on that. So
On that line of thought, do you think a deeper I hate the word conversation, but a deeper, I don't know.
let's continue the conversation,
Oh
Dan.
God, you got us. You got me. Damn it. I meant I think we have to have a lot more work done by serious theologians about supersessionism. And the notion that from whether it's from Nostra Aetate or whatever has been infiltrating the church, even liturgically, of the notion that the Jews are still the chosen preferred people rather than the church, and that's just ascriptural in so many ways. And I suspect that as the old adage goes, you just got to follow the money here. All Christian Zionists are, and influence of Christian Zionists, even within the Catholic Church, and is so powerful that we've moved away from even wanting to. The language is toxic. I mean, if you were to say,
Right.
we want to convert the Jews to Christianity, we want to have them come to the Lord, you're anathema in the Vatican, you're anathema in the Roman Curia, and God, you think you're getting a red hat, Bishop. There's no chance if you talk about supersessionism. But it's just plain as day for me. It's Pauline. It's the fathers of the church spoke. I mean, Athanasius equated Arianism to holding on to Judaism. That's what he equated it to on a variety of occasions. So it's anti-patristic and really against the doctrines of the church not to consider supersessionism as part of the faith. All right, Charlie, Christian Zionists.
Yeah, it's a 10 for me.
Okay, bingo. I like that. Any commentary there, or are you just short and sweet?
No, I have. Trevor brought up a good point when he talked about anti-Semitism and that being used kind of like as the new
Cudgel.
racist label.
Yeah.
But the problem with the Christian Zionists is that they seem to have more influence and they seem harder to shrug off for normies than people, you know, that just have seen, oh, wait, you said this, and this was racist. I can roll my eyes when you say it the fourth time. I think that this carries a little more weight with normies, and it just, yeah. Out of
Yeah.
everything we've named so far, this gets me beat red the most, probably.
Well, and our boy James Dellingpole over in England had a great episode, and I forgot who he was with, but it was an expert on supersessionism. And he talked about the history of Christian Zionism, first of all, being all made up, but then it even went to the state. What more history has to be done in a more exhaustive work, historical work has to be done, is the way in which the Judenstaat project, the Zionist project, wed itself very early. We tend to think of it kind of as a later development in which Christian Zionists kind of glommed on to the Jewish state and the project of the Jewish state in Israel. But it was much more, there was much more collaboration going back to the late 19th century between Christian Zionists and men like David Ben Gurion and others to promote the creation of Israel. To the extent that even when Ben Gurion and others and Theodor Herzl, who wrote Der Judenstaat, were envisioning what the state of Israel was going to be prior to World War I, even, and then going into and through World War II. There was a debate as to what to call it once it was established in Palestine. And the initial thought was they were going to just call it Judea, but they chose Israel because that's what the revelation of the Christian Zionists had said was going to come about. Not a state named Judea, but a state named Israel. So they made sure the name was Israel, which I didn't know that, but that's a fascinating historical point. All right, we're we ready for the last one?
Let's do it.
You're
Sounds
gonna
great.
laugh at this one, Trevor. The movie Brother, wait, what is it? Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. You know what that is, right?
I have not watched it. I don't think.
Charlie, do you know what this is?
No.
This was a movie. It was a 1972 film about Saint Francis, and Trevor, you explain what basically makes Francis out to a 70s hippie, Saint Francis of Assisi. So you said, what's your level of annoyance here, Trevor?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I'd say probably I had to go with I'd have to go with the 6 probably
Okay.
on this. Even though I've not seen the movie, just the making Saint Francis out to be this, like you said, this eco warrior hippie type.
Yeah.
I think that's still super prevalent today. Yeah, that does drive me nuts. I must have a sneaking suspicion. I'm sure that's probably as well one of the reasons why Pope Francis took the name as well, is
That's why
also this
it went up a
misconception.
point for me.
Okay.
Just the idea that we have this impression of Saint Francis and that's the impression that he glommed onto to take the name.
Yeah, I think it does a horrible disservice to Saint Francis and his legacy and Franciscans in general, the order, when that's the conception of what Saint Francis stood for, and just misrepresenting that for political and liberal theological agenda that people want to push.
Right. Yeah. I think Francis, as a former Dominican in formation, I did happen when I would read about Francis and we would talk with Franciscans, I would always say he was a little nuts. But he was nuts for God, and that's a good kind of crazy. If you're going to be crazy, go that way. I mean, anyone who goes to the Sultan in, I think it was Morocco, right? And he just tries to convert him. And basically the idea was he was going there expecting martyrdom to get decapitated, and he was just so holy. It's probably true that the Sultan probably looked at him and like, okay, he's crazy. There's no reason to martyr him. But at the same time, that someone that bold, that on fire with divine love, who yes could communicate with animals and yes interpret, yes, okay, fine, but that does not make him a 1970s Greenpeace founder. It doesn't make him your.
Exactly.
He doesn't make He doesn't make him the eco warrior with his Sierra Club issue in his backpack, trotting through and eating granola on the quad at University of Chicago. That's not Saint Francis. So that just drives me crazy. Charlie, although you're less familiar with Brother Sun, Sister Moon,
I've never seen it, but 6, just from what I'm hearing.
just what you're picking up.
Yeah.
All right. So that ends our segment. We didn't have Meanwhile in Oak Park, so we had to throw something out there. Oak Park's taking a break from the crazy, at least reporting it.
Yeah, Trevor, we forgot to tell you about this, but the Wednesday Journal is taking the week off, unfortunately, so we don't have a Meanwhile in Oak Park
That'd be
segment
great
for
if the next issue is all about a film review of Brother Sun, Sister Moon.
I was waiting for the news story on, you know, because we all know Advent's supposed to be a penitential season, that there was going to be maybe like a giving up of whiteness for Advent, and maybe that
Oh,
would have been
remember
a
that.
news story, not just Lent, but also Advent. So yeah, maybe you could let us know if that's a real thing in the next news cycle that comes along.
Maybe
Gary,
a call has to go out to the Unitarian Church, right? And just say, hey, by the way, Advent's a penitential season too. Get rid of the whiteness. Get rid of the whiteness. Which is when we did that show, didn't it strike you as so ridiculous that they think getting rid of white music is thus penitential?
you're
Isn't
dying laughing.
that's an admission that the white music is good,
That's exactly what I was thinking too.
right? Like, oh, we're gonna have to suffer through all these BIPOC hymns. Damn it. It's like, Gather Us In was written by a black Jesuit. So, and he was, he's probably a lesbian too. So,
Gosh.
or going that way. So anyway, that's the segment. Do we have any further commentary before we let Trevor go? I mean,
I've got
this
a
has been
bold
such a treat.
prediction. I've got a bold prediction for 2024. This is a Meanwhile in Oak Park prediction. Gary, I think we make the newspaper in 2024.
Oh God, let it come to pass. If we could just have our pictures.
I don't know
I don't care how bad I look.
I don't know
could look
for
all
what
sullen.
reason. Yeah, I don't know for what reason. It could be something completely unrelated to the podcast, but I think you'll see one of our names in the Wednesday Journal sometime in 2024, and we'll get to talk about it the next
Yeah.
week.
And Tridentine beer sale plummets in Oak Park River Forest. Don't worry about
Thanks,
that, Trevor.
guys.
That market's that's not going to be your key market, your target market anyway.
That's all right.
That's okay. We're going to still infiltrate it with the 5 or 6 people that are still of their wits in Oak Park River Forest. They'll be drinking a lot of Tridentine brew.
That's all right. We can't win everywhere. So we knew that. 5 or 6 is okay.
That's right.
Hey, if we get 10, maybe the Lord will spare it.
That's right. It's like Nineveh.
That's right.
I tend to think of more Sodom and Gomorrah, but Nineveh, that works too. Charlie's out of his Oak Park captivity, right? So
I never lived there, but yeah.
Well, close enough. I mean, really.
Yeah.
That's like a Roman saying, I only lived in Spain, I wasn't really a Roman.
Yeah.
I lived in Ostia. That wasn't me.
Yeah.
All right. Are we ready to wrap it up? I can't thank you enough, Trevor, for joining us again.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, Trevor, any plugs?
Yeah, we got a plug. Come on.
Yeah. Well, you can always follow us on Twitter, at Tridentine Brew, on Instagram at Tridentine Brewing. Go ahead and check us out, TridentineBrewing.com. Or, if you want any merch, I know Gary's got
T-shirt.
rocking he's got the
bottles,
t-shirt, he's
glasses.
got bottles, he's got the signs, he's got the Blessed Carl up there, he's got the Sacred Flame sign, everything. So, you want the Sacred Flame sign or the Carl sign or the t-shirt, check us out at TridentineBrewing.store, and be on the lookout. We're coming hopefully to a store near you if you live on the suburbs of Chicago. And yeah, again, if you can spare an Ave for us, it'd be much appreciated.
Thanks so much, Trevor. Hey, Charlie, thanks for being the hostess with the mostest. You're the best, bud.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks,
Last
Trevor.
episode of 2023.
Last episode, 2024. We're going to kill it. It's going to be the best year. It's going to be the best year. There's going to be years that came before this. they're not going to be nearly as great as this year. This is going to be the most insane year you've ever
It's the
seen.
most anti-Nikki Haley year ever. Or what's her nickname? What's her real name? Namasutra or something like that? I don't know. Kamala Namasutra. Who could keep it straight?
All right, everyone. God bless.
Bye. Take care.
But